Welcome to the candidates debate for the 17th State House seat, which includes Andover, Tewksbury, and Lawrence. My name is Keith Eddings. I'm covering the race for the Eagle-Tribune. We're joined by the candidates Pat Commane, Democrat, and Paul Adams, the Republican. We're going to start off with an introductory statement by each of the candidates. We'll begin right now. Paul Adams be first.
Well, good morning. My name is Paul Adams. Thank you, Keith, for hosting this discussion. I'm grateful to be here. I'm an Andover native. I have a public policy background in particular. The last 4 years I've been working as an independent policy advisor alongside dozens of elected officials across our Commonwealth. I've been working on a range of fiscal, economic, and social issues. I've had many successes, but what's driven me to run for state representative is seeing the way that our out-of-touch one-party legislature operates and seeing the corruption and arrogance on Beacon Hill firsthand. I have a record of fearlessly fighting for taxpayers, for businesses, and for our communities throughout my career, and also as a citizen who cares. I can't sit back anymore and wait for our leaders to do the right thing. To me, that means lower taxes, less spending. It means improving the investment climate for businesses, and it means giving people their economic freedom, which people desperately need right now. I'm in this for the cause of our businesses and the common people who are overtaxed and overburdened and overregulated. I think we're in an era of extraordinary government spending. This is the golden age, and I think we need to review our priorities. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Patricia Commane, and I'm running for state representative because I want to use my 24 years of experience helping people find jobs to help grow our local economy and get our people back to work. I've lived in Andover with my husband Tom for 14 years. During those years, I've been very involved in community activities, working to make our community better. For the last 10 years, I volunteered with the Andover Commission on Disability. One thing I'm very proud of is helping the Andover Police Department secure tracking equipment for people who have disabilities such as autism and Alzheimer's, where they tend to wander. I've also helped to lead and initiate the first town-wide clothing drive for Cradles to Crayons, which benefited 1,000 low-income kids.
10 seconds.
For the last 24 years, I've been working for the Massachusetts Rehabilitation Commission, helping people with disabilities find jobs and transform their lives.
Thank you very much. George Wallace said 20, 30, 40 years ago when he was running for president, he often said in his 3 campaigns for president that there's not a dime's worth of difference between the Republicans and the Democrats. I think in this race that the voters are getting the whole 10 cents, maybe a little bit more. Can you tell me, what struck me is the vastly different approach you two take to the basic question, and that is simply the role of government. What in your mind, each of your minds, is the role of government at the state level?
Well,
Paul?
Well, I think that I'm not running to increase government reliance or dependence. I'm running to get government out of the way. To me, that means regulation that makes sense for businesses, for taxpayers, for our communities. We have a plethora of mandates in this state that are costing taxpayers and our businesses a pretty penny. I think it's time to start revisiting some of those mandates. And in my mind, the way we start doing that is with lower taxes and less spending. I think we need to revisit many of the subsidies that we're also offering particular industries. We're picking winners and losers in the economy. The one-party legislature is spending hundreds of millions of dollars every year on subsidies for industries that they like. And I think that's wrong. I think we need to lower tax rates across the board for businesses and individuals. I think we need to have a level playing field. That's something that I have a record of supporting, and I'll continue to do that as a state representative. So I support decreasing government dependence.
I think it's important that government play a role in helping businesses to grow our local economy. I think this has always been the case, and it's one of the reasons why Massachusetts is a leader in innovation and technology. It's why we have the best educated, most diverse workforce in the country. And I do think it's important that government work on reducing mandates, work on reducing healthcare costs so that businesses can grow, create jobs, expand. And these are things that I would like to tackle as a representative on Beacon Hill.
Okay. Move on to a related question, and that's Proposition 3, rolling back the sales tax. Can you explain your position on it very briefly, but more important, can you explain, Paul, I'd like you, if you could, to explain how the lost revenue would be made up, if at all, and in particular, if you could address how Lawrence might deal with this problem, because 96% of their funding for schools comes from the state. And Pat, I'd like you to address the issue of whether or not you believe that communities along the New Hampshire border are especially hard hit when sales taxes increase because of the proximity to New Hampshire, which is sales tax free.
Well, well, look, I support a tax cut for any reason at any time, and I've been consistent in my support for tax decreases and spending decreases. I support lowering the sales tax rate immediately to 5%. As I've stated very clearly on numerous occasions. And over time, I would support rolling it back to 3% as well, if that is the will of the people. And unlike our one-party legislature, I support fulfilling the will of the people. I've looked at the numbers at the same time, and I think that 3% immediately is too much. I don't think any community in the Commonwealth can stomach that kind of a decrease in local aid. And at the same time, I want people to understand that the state doesn't have to cut local aid if they don't want to. I think when they're putting seniors and the homeless in the streets and then raise taxes, I think that sends a wrong message. I think that's the wrong trade-off that they're making, and I think they're doing it as a PR ploy.
Well, I think question 3 is really very reckless and irresponsible and would devastate our communities. But to get to your question about the 5% sales tax, if I were on Beacon Hill when that tax was passed, I would have fought against it. In this community, our proximity to New Hampshire makes it a very negative tax. I think the state does need the revenue, but that was not a tax I would have supported.
Okay, thank you. Paul, just a quick follow-up. You oppose Proposition 3?
I support Proposition 3, but what I'm saying is that in the near term, I would support rolling the sales tax back to 5%, and in the long term, working towards 3%, if that's the will of the people.
Okay. Let's move on to Lawrence. What's the problem in Lawrence, and how would you correct it? And could you, as much as you can in 1 minute, can you be as specific as you can?
Yeah, well, I support, as I've said, I support receivership for Lawrence. I think that's the right approach at this point in the game. The $35 million loan for Lawrence was proposed under the premise of supporting the budget as it currently stood. And I think that we need to have a long-term solution for Lawrence. All the $35 million really did was to plug the gap. Instead, we have a public safety crisis on our hands. Union contracts have not changed fundamentally. And we have 15 firefighters on the night shift in Lawrence. I mean, for a comparable city in Andover, we have about 60 firefighters. So I think the long-term solution is receivership. I think we need individuals who are financial professionals to come in and bring the mayor and the city councilors to the table and figure out a solution for the long term so that Lawrence can get itself back on its feet.
Yeah, I think the state dropped the ball last year in not putting the control board in place right away. I think that the problem was always too big. Yes, it was a new mayor and a new city council, but I think they needed the expertise of auditors, CPAs, business managers, labor negotiators. Right now, I think what's happening in Lawrence is the negotiations are poisoned due to personalities. I think the objectivity of a control board would be of enormous help.
Can I rebut that?
I'm sorry, yes, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say one thing, that Deval Patrick and the one-party legislature don't support a receiver. They don't support a control board. They support allowing the mayor to do basically whatever he wants. And that's why I'm saying, look, if you want someone who will step up to the plate and advocate for a receiver, then you elect me. Elect a Republican. It was the members of the Republican delegation were always opposed to the $35 million, and you're not going to get that with Deval Patrick.
I don't think it's a Democrat or a Republican issue. I've felt that way long before I thought I would be a candidate for state representative, and I'm on record as calling my legislator and state senator saying that I supported a control board before the decision was made.
Let's go to wander into a more social policy issue, and this is not. I haven't seen a lot of social issues debated much in this campaign, for better or worse. But I want to revisit one, and that's same-sex marriage. Paul, you said it's a dead issue in the state. I'd like you to tell me if that means you would oppose any effort to bring it back. And Pat, if you would, I'd like you to tell me what you think it is irrelevant. It may be a relevant issue in this race.
Well, look, I think voters wanted that issue to take one direction. They wanted that on the ballot. And there are still to this day majorities of voters in the Commonwealth who want to at least vote on it. Whether they support same-sex marriage or not isn't the question. I think it's being able to vote on it. And again, this is an issue where you have a number of ballot questions that either passed or that were subverted by the legislature. And because they thought that they know better how to deal with, to deal with the people's questions. So I think it's important that, look, if there's going to be same-sex marriage in the Commonwealth, fine, but let us at least vote on the issue. That's the direction we wanted to take it.
Well, I'm not sure if the issue will come up legislatively or not, but the sky did not fall when gay marriage passed in Massachusetts, and I think most people have moved on from it. But what I would ask Paul is what his experience has been in fighting gay marriage with the Mass Family Institute. In his professional work experience, I would say that the bulk of his experience is in fighting gay marriage and not so much on being the relentless taxpayer that he claims to be. I think his work experience is much more geared to fighting gay marriage.
Well, I couldn't disagree more. I joined a number of different organizations in our Commonwealth fighting higher taxes and higher spending. Social issues have been, if anything, almost irrelevant. What I've been doing are sticking up for candidates. I've been helping candidates. I've been fighting for legislation on economic and fiscal and social issues, but that hasn't been the focal point of my career. You can talk to local leaders who have endorsed my candidacy and representatives who are endorsing me because of my work for taxpayers and businesses. That's what I commit to doing.
Well, I mean, I think fighting for people's basic civil rights is something that I feel very strongly about, and I can only say that I believe my opponent does not support basic civil rights for all people.
Okay. Move on to another distant issue, and that is, Paul, you've made several references so far to the one-party legislature. Why run as a Republican for the State House where you are a handful of representatives in a sea of Democrats, and how would you make yourself effective in that climate? And Pat, I'd like you, if you could tell me if you think that there is a problem in a state that has such a huge lopsided one-party majority, and if there is a problem there, how you would fix it.
Well, I would first, well, thank you for the question. I would first say that that as a Republican, being a member of the not just minority but extreme minority actually gives me better access than any other representative that comes from the Democratic Party. And the reason is because of by virtue of House rules. So you have 37 major committees and only 16 Republicans, so they're all doing overtime from day one. So I've already spoken with the House Minority Leader. You know, if I'm so fortunate enough to be elected, I will have priority access to House Ways and Means, Budget and Finance, Transportation, the most influential committees. Whereas my opponent, it would take, if she gets elected, it would take her 12 or 14 years to make it through the pecking order before she has access to any influential committees. So I think you get more representation, you get more bang for your buck by having a Republican represent the district. I think that's good for Lawrence. I think that's good for taxpayers and businesses in our district, not for a one-party legislature.
Well, I can guarantee you I won't be in the legislature for 12 to 14 years. I'm not planning on being a career politician. I never have been planning on that. What I am is a committed citizen who wants to do good, make some improvements, work to reduce healthcare costs, help our employers and our business environment. The party does not matter to me. What matters is getting things done.
Well, I would say, look what happens when we have a one-party legislature. We have tax increases, deficit spending, we have additional mandates. I mean, people are getting killed out there. People are going to New Hampshire and buying groceries up there to save $15 or $20
right.
a month on groceries. And that's why it's so important to have some balance in government. Wow. Otherwise, you're going to continue to get the same old, same old. You'll get another go-along to get along vote in a one-party legislature. I think that's wrong.
Well, groceries aren't taxed in New Hampshire. And, you know, I've always thought if the Republicans wanted more people in the legislature, they should run better candidates. It's up to the voters to decide. And I think the argument is pretty short.
Okay. Last question for you. It's always one of my favorites in a debate, and I'm going to invite each of you to ask the other one a question.
Well, Pat, we're facing, as you know, $2.7 billion in budget and projected budget deficits next year, and $2 billion in 2012. So which taxes would you choose to increase to close that deficit?
Well, I'm not looking to increase any taxes. I think we're at the point where people feel like they have certainly been taxed enough. And spending cuts are going to be critical. In my experience working for the Commonwealth, I have seen ridiculous amounts of waste, inefficiency, and duplication of services. And I'd like to reorganize and restructure state government from the top down. There are many managers and administrators and bureaucrats that I don't believe are earning their paycheck, and I would like to tackle that.
Again, if you want that to happen, then choose a Republican. Choose somebody who is the real deal. If you have another Democrat that's another cog in the wheel, then they're going to get stomped down by the Democratic leadership. We've seen that time and again.
Well, I mean, you can believe whatever you want to believe, but I'm not going to be beholden to anybody. Again, I'm not going to be a career politician, and for me, it's not going to be about the next election. It's about doing what we can to make our state better, to improve our local economy, make sure that local aid is protected as best we can, making sure that we have the best public schools, and that we're preparing our students for the jobs of today and the jobs of the future. Well, Paul, I think your question to me was an excellent question, and I know that it's going to be a very, very tough legislative year next year with I heard $2 billion, but you're saying $2.8 billion. How would you close that giant gap?
Well, I think that's easy. You start by fundamentally reforming government, Pat, and you know that. You've worked in state government for 20 years. You would see more than anyone else the waste and the fraud and the abuse that's there. Mm-hmm. So look, critical government reforms. We need to start reforming healthcare. We need to start reforming transportation. These are the agencies that have some of the biggest cost savings, yet your party has purposefully refused to fundamentally reform government. Over the last 3 years, we have billions of dollars of savings sitting there, waiting for us to take up. The Republican caucus has always promoted those reforms. Your party has fundamentally refused to do so. I would take those up from day one. I'll continue to fight for businesses and taxpayers, and my opponent won't. She supports tax increases on gasoline, alcohol, and candy. I mean, come on.
You get to rebut that.
Well, I don't think you're right in your assessment of me. I think I am somebody who's very tight with the dollar and wants to make sure that taxpayers are getting the best value for their dollar. And I have been complaining for many, many years about state government, and that's a large reason why I'm running for this position, is I want to see government reform. I don't want to see tax increases, but we do need to have a balanced state budget, and I don't think Paul has addressed realistically how he would close that gap, particularly if question 3, which is so reckless and irresponsible, if question 3 passes, government services will be decimated and there'll be a lot of unhappy people out there. Look, people want solid government services.
Look, if you support government reform so much, then where have you been for the last 20 years? I would like to see a letter from the Inspector General. Show me something substantive that shows that you cared about the waste and the fraud in your agencies.
I have written letters. I
would love to see it.
I'll try to produce one for you.
Don't you think it's a conflict of interest to have a state employee?
Not at all.
Sending a state employee to Beacon Hill?
I think it's a wonderful benefit to have somebody who's seen it from the inside for 20 years.
We'll take closing statements now. Paul?
Sure. Well, again, I've shown my commitment to businesses and taxpayers in our communities. No one has done more to support local aid in this race. I sponsored a ballot question in the year 2008 that was overwhelmingly supported by the people. It returned lottery revenues back to cities and towns to help pay for local services. I've shown my commitment. I also promised to get government out of the way. I believe in lower taxes. I believe in less spending. I think we're in an era of extraordinary government spending, and it's time to scale it back. I also think we need critical government reforms. There are $2 billion worth of reforms that the Democratic Party just refuses to take up. I think that's wrong. I also think we need to support community priorities. I've been someone who's active and involved in the community. I have representatives and local officials from our district that have all endorsed my candidacy, and I promise to continue to fight for you, the taxpayer. Thank you.
Well, as your state representative, I want to continue to focus on growing our economy, to making sure that we have the best possible environment for businesses, especially our small businesses, to start up, to create jobs, to work on reducing healthcare costs, which I believe is critical for companies to grow, and to make sure our students are getting the foundation and the skill set that they'll need for today's jobs and the jobs of the future. As I mentioned, I'm not planning on being a career politician. I'm a committed citizen who loves my community and wants to work to make it better. I have a great ability to listen, to problem solve. I work hard, I meet goals, and this is what I would like to do as your state legislator. And I would be honored to have your vote on November 2nd.
Okay. Again, thank you for joining us. Election day is Tuesday, November 2nd.